Welcome, everybody, to the NFL Show on the Gruely True Sports Network. The NFL Show is brought to you by nobody right now. We need a sponsor so we can, pay for Anthony to do this. Because, Anthony, you need some money, don't you?
I do.
Okay, see, Anthony needs money. But, Anthony, don't you get paid for winning all the fantasy championships?
I do pretty well.
Okay. So you play in leagues where – what kind of money can you make on a fantasy football thing?
It all depends on what kind of leagues you're in. There are some leagues where people play for fun. That's not really me. There has to be something on the line. Like even in an experts league where if it's a bunch of analysts, usually there's a trophy or a championship belt involved. But, if it's 10 to 12 guys, I usually like the 12-man leagues. If people are throwing in $20, $100, there are leagues where $300 buy-ins. There are high stakes leagues that are $1,300 buy-ins, and you can really make some money. And then there's also daily fantasy, the DFS, the FanDuels, and the DraftKings, to where you're playing for millions.
All right. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster, and of course, we've got Anthony Cervino from the FF Face-Off. And Anthony, what do you think about Antonio Brown working out with the New Orleans Saints? Do you think there's anything to this?
I think the Saints are going to do their due diligence. Now, the past couple of off seasons, we've seen the Saints bring in guys like Dez Bryant. They brought in Brandon Marshall. They've brought in Cameron Meredith. They've been looking for a reliable wide receiver, too, opposite Michael Thomas, really for the past 2 years. Obviously, Dez tore the Achilles. Cameron Meredith can't stay healthy. He's in New England. Brandon Marshall was a wash. And I think Antonio Brown's just that next guy up.
But does he fit? We know he is one of the best receivers in football. At least he was when he was playing. And you've already got Michael Thomas there. But my big question is here, is it worth the trouble? And number two, would the NFL just put him on the commissioner's exempt list and he can't play anyway?
Well, that's the deal. As soon as Antonio Brown signs, whether it's with the Saints or somebody else, the NFL will put him on the commissioner's exempt list. At least that's what I'm getting from the Ian Rappaports and the Adam Schefters of the world.
So does it even matter?
It all depends. I don't know how this is going to shake out. If the NFL does what they have to do, he signed, they can immediately take him off the list and he could be ready to go. I just don't know what the hell he did or what he's got. It's just there's so many question marks about that situation. But if he is going to be cleared to play, he can certainly make a difference on that Saints team.
Well, yeah, he can make a difference on any team he's on.
Think about it. New England, he was the wide receiver one. In Pittsburgh, he was the wide receiver one. Michael Thomas is the best receiver in football, and if Antonio Brown's your number two, that's not to mention a Jared Cook, and then a guy like Ted Ginn, who's the wide receiver two right now. He's at the end of his career. He's still that deep threat, but all of a sudden, to have a Ted Ginn as your third or fourth option going deep, that Saints team is going to be extremely dangerous. But again, it all depends on if the Saints sign him and if the NFL will eventually clear him to play.
Yeah, and a healthy Alvin Kamara.
And Latavius Murray, the list goes on.
Yeah. So, all right, let's move on, and we're going to talk a little Philadelphia Eagles, because I know you love to talk about the Eagles, but Zach Ertz's status is still uncertain. But Jordan Howard has been cleared to return and is expected to play Sunday in Philadelphia's Week 17 contest against the New York Giants. Howard hasn't played since the Eagles' Week 9 win over the Chicago Bears. And I think it's fair to say his absence has left a huge void on this offense. And getting him back would be enormous right now, especially if they're going to the playoffs.
Yeah, and during Howard's absence, it was a struggle the first two games, but As Miles Sanders grew into that number one role, he is really starting to flash. And we also saw the emergence of a Boston Scott. But neither one of those running backs can do what Jordan Howard can do in short yardage and goal line situations. He can extend drives. He can get those short yards. And I think that's where he's really going to help this offense.
All right, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have lost Chris Godwin. It looks like he will be out for Week 17. The status of Dallas Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott remains the same, according to Coach Jason Garrett. Garrett said Friday that the team is still taking it day to day, and that he was able to take part in a pre-practice walkthrough, but is unlikely to practice much on Friday. I still think Dak's going to play.
Yeah, Dak's going to be out there. It's going to be the Fox game of the week. It could be determining the NFC East if Philly falls to New York. And that's not, I wouldn't exactly say it's impossible, because with Eli Manning, they had a respectable lead going into halftime, and then the Giants defense did what the Giants defense does. But this Daniel Jones factor, he's more mobile clearly than Eli Manning. And they have Saquon Barkley looking like Saquon, and if he can get going, these receivers are dangerous. So I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. So the question is going to be, can Philly outscore New York if that offense is clicking?
Well, and there's a lot better chance they could if Jordan Howard's there.
Right.
And plus, with Jordan Howard, maybe you can control the clock a little bit more. All right. Weeks ago, it seemed Dan Quinn's fate was sealed. They were sitting at 1-7. The Falcons were at the bye week. It appeared that the Falcons would move on from him after 5 seasons, but it doesn't look to be so much the case anymore, as the Falcons have played much better. It looks like him and GM Thomas Dimitroff will return in 2020. Do you think this is a good move or a bad move?
I don't exactly hate the move. I think Dan Quinn is up there as one of the more underachieving coaches in the league, but Thomas Dimitroff, he's one of my favorite general managers. There's always a ton of talent. There's always a team that could compete in Atlanta. It's just a matter of Dan Quinn. And Dan Quinn this season, years past, it was defensive injuries. This year, there were some injuries on offense. When you're talking about an Ito Smith, their running back too. Matt Ryan missed some time. I think the defense with Dan Quinn calling the shots, maybe it was a little too much for him, because some head coaches can't call the offense or the defense and also be a head coach. We see that with Freddie Kitchens. So I think Dan Quinn is as underachieving as he is. I think they're going to give him one more chance, because Arthur Blank does like him, and he does stand by his general manager and head coach.
Well, and I'll tell you, it's to the point where we see the new guys that get hired every year. I mean, is there really a better option for Atlanta right now?
You broke up there for a second.
I said, is there even really a better option in keeping Dan Quinn with Atlanta right now? Because most of the guys we see come into this league fail, and at least Dan Quinn has had some success before.
Yeah, and they're also playing for him this second half. Look at the teams they beat: San Francisco, New Orleans, and it wasn't a shootout. I mean, they held the Saints to 0 touchdowns. I don't know when the last time that happened.
And the second time they played them, they gave them all they wanted to. I think they lost the game by a touchdown.
Right. So this team does play for Dan Quinn, which is something that we don't see with Jason Garrett and the Cowboys. That's the big difference there. As underachieving as he is, the team plays for him.
All right, so let's talk about the Cowboys again. Jason Witten says he does not envision this being his last game. Do you think this is the last game for Witten, or do you think he'll be back?
With all the talent in Dallas, Jason Witten, he still looks like he can hang, because we saw it with Antonio Gates last season when Hunter Henry went down and Gates was the tight end one. They brought him back from retirement, and he didn't even finish as the top guy in the depth chart. Virgil Green beat him out, where Jason Witten is still holding his own. He's still catching touchdowns and converting third downs, and he's still a reliable target. Now, he's not much with run after the catch. Eventually, we will see Blake Jarwin take over as the tight end, but I can see Jason Witten coming back. He's a good locker room guy. And I also think Jason Witten wants to win a Super Bowl and believes that the talent is there. They just have to get rid of that head coach.
Yeah, but then the question is, if the new head coach comes in, does he want an old Jason Witten that was so attached to the previous administration?
I mean, Jason Witten's been attached to many administrations.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
he's been there with Parcells.
Yeah, he was there with Tom Landry too, wasn't he? It seems like it, at least.
I mean, he's the longest tenured Cowboy of all time.
Is he? Point. He's played like 250 or 60 games, hasn't he?
Something like that. And he doesn't miss a lot of games either.
Yeah. Tennessee Titans. Derrick Henry, with a hamstring injury, says he is ready to face the Texans. Number one, are the Texans starting Deshaun Watson this week? Or do you know?
I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything from the Texans at all about resting players.
Yeah, because I really think if the Texans don't rest anybody, they could beat the Titans. And I think that RG3 could beat the Steelers. The Oakland Raiders could be a playoff team.
Can you imagine?
I think that would be funny as hell.
I think the ultimate egg on the face for a guy like Antonio Brown, and it can't happen, but if there was a way that the Raiders and the Steelers made it, but obviously it can't.
Yeah. Well,
but for Antonio Brown to make that much noise to get out of Oakland, and they make the playoffs, and he's on a commissioner's exempt list, I mean, that's kind of what he deserves.
Yeah, that is exactly what he deserves. All right, let's talk about the we would go through and pick all the games like we normally do, but most of these games are pretty much meaningless, Anthony. Which games, we'll save the 49ers Seahawks for last, but if you have to pick the Eagles and the Giants and take your Dallas Cowboys sunglasses off, who do you like, Eagles or Giants?
It's a hard game to pick. It's a very hard game to pick. Because I think the Giants have a realistic shot. They're the healthier team. It wouldn't surprise me if the Giants won the game, but I think this is a game that Carson Wentz has a lot to prove. Carson Wentz has been proving it down the stretch, but this is the game. This is the game to really put the Nick Foles, Carson Wentz conversation to bed. And I think Carson Wentz is going to do what he has to do.
Don't you think in Philly the only way you ever put that to bed is if Carson Wentz wins a Super Bowl?
I guess.
I mean, come on. I mean, it's hard to top that. I think this. What I see here is I think Doug Peterson will have his team prepared. I think the New York Giants need a new football coach because what they got in Shermer is not cutting it. And when you bring that up and you look at the way Carson Wentz has played over the last month, I don't think there's any way that the Eagles lose this game.
Now, if Zach Ertz doesn't play or if he plays and gets knocked out, I think that can be significant.
I don't think it'll matter. I think there's a huge difference in coaching. There's a huge difference in quarterback play. And usually when both of those differences favor one particular team, that team wins the game. I'm not saying it won't be a close game. I think it will be. But I think in the end, I think the Philadelphia Eagles will gut this out and make the playoffs.
You said if both teams...
I said it's going to be a close game. But in the end, the Philadelphia Eagles will will themselves. They will play better at the quarterback position. They will be coached better, and they'll win the game.
They need to contain Saquon Barkley. If Saquon Barkley plays like he did the past two games, I think the Giants win.
Okay. Well, they won't. You're just saying that because you get your Dallas Cowboy glasses on.
No, because there's no guarantee Dallas is going to beat Washington.
There's not, because I think this.
Especially with Case Keenum.
Yeah, that's what scares me. If this was Dwayne Haskins, I would say you're going to win the game. But with Case Keenum, now Case hasn't played in a while, but Case Keenum's a solid NFL quarterback.
Yeah, Case Keenum could be the next less explosive Ryan Fitzpatrick, where he's just a journeyman backup, but if he has to play, he's going to play well.
Yeah. You would expect it. Case Keenum's probably not going to play great, but he's not going to play bad. He will be decent. It's just according. And the other concern is this. I mean, if I'm playing against the Dallas Cowboys, I'm putting 8 or 9 guys in a box. I'm taking Zeke away, and I'm going to find out just how bad Dak Prescott's shoulder is.
Yeah, and they have a pass rush. As bad as that Washington Redskins secondary is, and they can be gashed on the ground, they have some talented pieces to get to the quarterback. Ryan Kerrigan especially, he's one of my favorite players in the league. And who's that rookie they brought in? Didn't they draft a pass rusher in the first round? Josh Allen?
Josh Allen.
Or is he a buff?
He's a quarterback.
No, there's also
I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
Josh Allen.
I think it was the same name. Yeah.
Oh no, he's in Jacksonville.
Yeah. All right. Next up, games that matter. Green Bay at Detroit. Any chance for the Lions here?
No.
I would normally say no, but Green Bay plays teams at home that are just as bad as the Lions and struggles with them. But I don't. If Matt Stafford was all of a sudden show up, I would give him a chance, but not with David Blah or whatever the hell his name is.
Yeah, there's some. I mean, really, the only thing that the Lions have going on offense, Kenny Galladay is emerging. I don't want to call him DeAndre Hopkins quarterback proof, but he has had a big season despite the fact that he had Driscoll and David Blah throwing to him for most of the second half. And they also have Kerryon Johnson. He played last week. His first game coming off IR, he had about 11 touches, was okay, didn't do much. On the road in Denver, this is a softer matchup, and I think this could be a game for Kerryon to get going. But still, the Green Bay Packers should, considering that they're playing for the number 1 seed potentially. They should. At worst,
they're playing for number 2.
If Seattle beats the 49ers and the Packers win, I believe the Packers get it.
If Seattle beats the 49ers, yeah, the Packers would get it. Either way, the Packers are getting a number 2 seed if they win, I believe.
Yes.
So, all right. Any other games that matter? Well, of course, Cleveland will battle Cincinnati in the Battle of Ohio, and the Bengals will win this game, Anthony.
I guess. I mean, they have the draft pick locked up, so they should win it.
Well, I think they were trying to win the whole time. I really don't think there may be front offices that want to tank, but I don't think there's a coach worth his salt that goes out trying to lose a game for a draft pick.
No, and I think the perfect example was the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, because they played hard.
If Miami was legitimately trying to tank, and they were still able to win, 4 games under Brian Flores, watch out for that Miami Dolphins team under Flores. Because he's going to be.
You know what they remind me of? They don't have the talent of last year's Buffalo, but they remind me of the Buffalo Bills and Sean McDermott. It goes back to the same thing.
That's a good comp.
The same thing I said last year is the same thing I think when I see Flores' teams, even if they're getting their asses kicked. I never, ever think that they're not trying. And to me, you talked about Dan Quinn and how hard those guys are playing for him. If you have a coach and players play hard for him, I don't care if he's a horrible coach. He will be successful because those guys will play for him. The Jason Garrett problem in Dallas is this. A lot of Cowboys games I've seen this year, like the Buffalo game, it looked like that team quit. And once you've quit on your coach, that coach usually has a hard time getting it back. And I think, like the Dan Quinn thing in Atlanta, I know I gave him a hard time because of the Super Bowl, but they made the playoffs the next year, and they've been ate up with injuries over the last 2 years. But even then, when I watched the Falcons, I never got the idea that they weren't trying. You can be trying and get beat 40-0. But when I watched the Cowboys lose 26-15 to Buffalo or whatever it was, I didn't get the idea that after that team scored first that they even really gave that much of a crap anymore.
No. you saw it with the way they played the game.
Yeah. And that's what worries me about the Redskins game for the Cowboys is, the Redskins may come out with more to play for if they like their head coach and want to keep him. And the Redskins
You really
have
think Bill
played
Callahan
dramatically
has a
better.
shot?
Huh?
You really think Bill Callahan has a shot to
It doesn't
remain head coach?
it doesn't matter if I think he does or not, because what I'm saying is this. Those players, if they like him, and to me the Redskins have played much better since he's become the head coach. If they want to keep him, even if there's no chance that they'll keep him, they will play their butts off for him because of the respect they have for him. Now, I don't know if that's true in Washington, but I think from watching this last month of the season, it doesn't look like they've laid down a whole heck of a lot, is all I'm saying. And they do seem like they play much harder than what they did under Jay Gruden.
No, I'll give you that.
So that would be my worry there. But the Bengals will beat the Browns. All right, Seattle, San Francisco, at Seattle. Who do you like here, Anthony?
This is potentially the NFL game of the week. There's so much at stake.
It's the only game where things really matter for both teams.
Right, and there's a lot at stake, especially for the 49ers. This is Marshawn's going to play this week, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I'd assume.
This is a hard game to pick. I think I am going to lean the way of the Seattle Seahawks.
I think the Seattle Seahawks are going to win this game. I think the 49ers have a better chance to end up in the Super Bowl, but I think the Marshawn Lynch signing was brilliant because the thing that struck me is I did the college football show with Randy Cross yesterday, and you can hear that later on our Spreaker channel, and you can go to Twitter and find it. But the one thing he brought up about Marshawn Lynch was the fact that the guy really loves to play the game, and he brings energy to a locker room. I think Marshawn Lynch is going to run for 100 yards. And I think Seattle is going to win this game with Russell Wilson making a big play at the end. I also think this. If one of these two teams go to the Super Bowl, it'll be the 49ers coming out as a wild card before it'll be Seattle. Because I think the Niners are just a better team. But I think all the stars are aligning here. The way this has been set up with Marshawn Lynch, you got Russell Wilson. They're playing at home. I know they've lost a bunch of home games this year. Well, pretty much most of the games they've lost this year has been at home. But I like Seattle in the upset. It's an upset to me. I don't know what the point spread is on it, but because I don't believe in illegal gambling or legal gambling. I think that's the devil, Anthony.
Do you?
No, I don't really care either way. Put it like this: if I bet money on something and I win, I think it's all right. If I lose, I think the devil's probably got something to do with it. Then I don't like it no more. But yeah, I think this is going to be a hell of a football game, and I think that if Marshawn Lynch can run for 80 yards or more, I think Seattle wins the game. And I think all these 49ers fans, which I know a lot of because I'm friends with a few, that are running around thinking that, Marshawn Lynch being signed's a big joke. I don't think it is.
Who's taking it lightly?
Oh, no. I've seen all kind of 49er fans that are, they got Marshawn Lynch, and they all act like it's no big deal. What's Mike Hoff think? Is he worried about Marshawn Lynch?
We're gonna dig into that game today. We covered the early games yesterday. We'll be covering the 4:00 and obviously the Sunday night game on today's show. But he's a big time 49ers fan. He has confidence, but I do know he's worried. He keeps saying that this game is going to take years off of his life. Welcome to being a Cowboys fan.
Now, can you have guests on your FF Face-Off show?
Can I have what?
Guest.
Yeah.
Okay, if Mike doesn't listen to our show, maybe before a 49er playoff game, we could get Randy to call in, and you guys could have Randy on.
That would be great.
Okay. We'll do that. Don't tell him, though. Don't let him listen to this show, even though I tagged him in it. But, Um, all right. Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap it up?
No, I think we just about covered everything.
All right, guys. Make sure you go over to Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, all those places. Check out the NFL show. Check out all the shows we do at thegruelingtruth.com. Make sure you go check out the FF Face Off, which I think you can follow Anthony at The Real NFL Guru, correct?
Absolutely. You can find me on all the social media and top podcast platforms.
All right, guys. So we're going to wrap it up for today. We'll be back Monday to recap everything that happened over the weekend. So make sure you check back with us. But for now, for Anthony Cervino, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.